Hi everyone, I'm pleased to introduce you to this new series of 30 Minutes With. 30 Minutes With is a series with African artists, policymakers, academics on current African issues. We have today a leading Ghanaian artist, designer, photographer. He's an eclectic and multidimensional artist. His name is Serge Atoukwei Clottey. He's born in Ghana and earned a BFA from the Ghanata College of Art and Design in Accra. He then continued his studies in Brazil at Escola Guignard University of Art in Belo Horizonte. Serge Atoukwei Clottey lives and works in Ghana, and today he receives us in his Labadi studio. Clottey is known for his work that examines the powerful agency of everyday objects, working across installation, performance, photographies, culture. He explores narratives of personal and family collective histories, often relating to trade and migration. Based in Ghana and working internationally, Clottey is the creator of the concept of Afro-Ghananism that we will elaborate on more later. So through cutting, drilling, stitching and melting found materials, Clottey's sculptural installations are bold assemblages that act as a means of inquiry into questions and form of history. As a founder of Ghana's Go Local Performance Collective, he sees art as a way to transform society, and we will find out more just now. Hi Serge.
Hi.
Thank you for welcoming us in your studio.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's so inspiring to just see all the work you are currently working on.
Thank you.
Yes, for example, this piece, can you please tell us more about this series in black and white?
Okay, this series is a new body of work, and it's called Sex and Politics, which I think was inspired by current state of the country, because the country is facing so much political distractions, and I think sex is also part of that distraction, because there are these issues about gender and equality that it's being tackled in Ghana, but it's because of our tradition as Ghanaians, it has become a problem how to accept those gender equality. And for me, as an artist, anytime I try to create an artwork, I first think of my situation as an artist. How can I survive, and what is my inspiration? I always question myself that, and what comes in mind, it's politics and sex, because I mean, sex is something that as a youth you experience, but politics is something that shape your life, for better. So those are the two things that comes into my mind, and I can the only way I can express that is drawing in black and white. So I'm criticizing politics and sex, so that is how I came about this drawing. But these sketches are from my old sketchbook from 2000, 2016, for a long time. And since I came from a painting background, I sort of missed that connection, because I'm now doing performance art and installation and sculpture, which I studied myself. I didn't learn from school. I learned how to paint in school, but self-taught,
Yes.
So these are something that reminds me of the past, and how do I incorporate the past and the present. So I'm working on this series of it's supposed to be 100 pieces, and the idea was to exhibit in my community, because I'm finding ways to engage people in the community, because they are not aware of what arts can transform,
So when you decide, for example, that you are going to work on sex and politics, and you say you want to make it participatory, do you have an exact idea of what you want to do, or is it through discussing with people that you shape the final project that you have?
Yeah, I think through discussions, because once I put them out in abandoned spaces, and it's a neutral grounds where people walk around, so they first look at it, and they want to know what it, out of curiosity, and that is how I approach them and tell them, okay, this is the idea. But because I've done quite a number of performances in my community, they are really aware of the kind of impact that the Go Local and myself are playing in the community. So anytime there's a bunch of guys around, they are curious what we are coming to do next and all that. So I think that the transformation has already taken form because of the engagement with the community, So I'm looking forward to see how they also respond, because they've seen quite a number of my plastic installation, and now the whole community is sort of engaged because they provide me with broken gallons. You know, anytime I wake up in the morning, I see a bunch of gallons in front of my door because they are trying. I made them understood that it's actually a problem, and the best way to solve the problem is through my artistic practice. You know, so people are getting rid of the gallons because it's not healthy to store water in them, you know, especially drinking water. The water gets contaminated over a period of time, you know, so through that sort of engagement and education, they've sort of understood and they are getting rid of the gallons. Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to ask. What I found out is that your work is very political. You are a very political artist. You are very engaged. And where does it come from? And would you define yourself as an artist? Like an artist and an activist, in the sense that you did two powerful performances. The one was Who Puppets Are You in 2012, and the second one, there are a lot of other work that you did, like African Needs Fair, Fair Trade and Charity, and another one that was held on Ghana's Independence Day, and so on. So how was it received first, and why those positions?
I think that being a political artist is a very risky position, but I felt that the more I speak out, the more people understand. You know, the more, because it's sort of art form where you're expressed by performance. You know, it's not like it's been written, it's a text based or maybe film or music. It's just using yourself to address that issue. So for me, it was a challenge because performance art in Ghana was something new and people are not familiar with, you know, but I'm constantly, you know, pushing that sort of idea to people. So I do a lot of performance which was found by myself. I just go on the street and do a performance, and I have people photographing with their phones, and you end up seeing them sharing around, you know. So performance art is something that I actually push myself, you know, to make it happen for people to understand that it's also another art forms, you know, which is.
And do you think it's truer, like when you perform and when you use yourself to present convey the message that you want to?
Yeah, I think that it's reach wider audience, you know, by using myself, because they realize that as an artist, I don't just think about myself, you know, in my studio and just work for myself, you know. I think about the world, the space in which I live, you know. So they sort of engage instantly because they see me that I'm actually risking my career to address certain issues which is going to take form or is going to help the society. Yeah, so I think that performance is mostly my interest as an artist. I think in performance. So my sculpture, my drawings are also performance based, you know, because I sort of have this movement of flow that I use in working on different series together, you know. So performance is something that I can easily express myself, you know. Yeah.
And how about, you were talking about how you engage with your community. Is that what pushed you to create the Go Local Collective? And can you introduce us and tell us more about this collective, what its purpose are?
The Go Local was actually formed in 2012 when I moved into this space, because then I was living with my mom's family. And I moved here because my family has a migration background, which I think it's very in line with my practice, because I work a lot with migration. So I got so interested in how my family has a migration background and how can I incorporate that with my practice. So I moved here in 2011. My dad was actually living here and he moved out. So this is like a family, in Labadi. It's like a generational space. Yeah. So when I came here, I was already doing a performance, but solo. But I did some few performances in the community, and people were so interested, you know, because like, who is this guy, you know? And this is my studio. I have journalists coming in with cameras, people coming, so they were very curious because they didn't know what I was doing in this room, you know. So yeah, I did a presentation of my previous works for them to see this is what I do, and actually they saw one of my performance on TV, and that is how it, you know, urged them to come to my studio to be curious what I do, you know. So 2012, the first performance we did together with the Go Local was whose puppet are you, which is very political. And I want to test how they can also have a strong position. So yeah,
who decided of the name Go Local?
Go Local myself.
Okay.
Yeah, because I grew up in La, and I think that it's a very poor community, and so for me, Go Local is something which defines who we are and where we come from, and what we are aiming. You know, so the Go Local is something that I just come into my after engaging with the locals. So I like Go Local, and that's how the name came. So 2012 was the first performance that we did, and during the performance, 4 days before election, we went early morning, in the middle of the night. We went on the street to peel all these political posters. It's not allowed, so we had to do it in the middle of the night. So in the morning, during the traffic jam, we had to stop in one of the high streets and put up the costume. So yeah, they have like strings, ropes tied to my neck and my wrist, and they were dragging me across the street. So we had to stop the cars and do the performance on the pavement. So the idea was how the politicians manipulate the youth with money and all goodies during election. So after election, when they come back to their seats, they have nothing to offer. You know, so we played that sort of engagement on the streets. And funny enough, there were police patrol all over, and they had to stop to watch the performance because they were not sure if we actually paid or this performance was found by the government or a political party. So they were also surprised and scared in a way. So they just watched the performance and they left. The military was also around to see the performance. You know,
so in general, you don't have the right to perform without authorization in the street.
Well, you need to get it right. Okay. But as a Go Local collective, this is what we want to tackle, that we hijack space. We don't care who owns that space. But once the government attempt of anything, that is where the performance become loud, become very, very, very open, you know, for people to know what it means. So yeah, so that performance was actually covered by one of the TV stations who was running around to cover election and how people to cover all the election activities. So they actually filmed the performance and interviewed me, and it was on TV that evening. And people were calling because I never thought they could show it that evening. You know, I did the performance and I'm fine with my result. I have my film, I have my stills and all that. But it was on TV and people were calling me. They thought I was arrested, you know, yeah. So that is where I felt how powerful that position was, you know, performing as and how it engaged globally. Yeah.
And I think it's also a way to engage with your own leaders.
Exactly.
As a way to hold them accountable in some way. To say we are watching you and what you're doing. Right. So what about the concept of Afro-Galonism? Can you tell us more?
Yeah.
This is also another
the Afro-Galonism is very important to my practice because the name came about 4 years ago. But then I was exploring with this plastic gallon since I left for Brazil. So when I came back to Brazil, that is where I began to research on that object. But then I was using them as a canvas piece and just drawing on them, you know. And it's also...
What is a gallon? Can you tell us more about what it means in Ghana?
Yeah, the gallons, it has become part of our life. It's very symbolic, and they were imported from Europe and outside for as cooking oil containers. Majority of them were coming from Turkey and Malaysia before, but now there are a lot of few African countries who are producing that object and using to transport oil. So I was interested in like the migration background of that object when I came back from Brazil. I wanted to look into it and what it means and how it has become part of our life as modern Africans. You know, so they were used for transporting cooking oil from Europe, and we use them. I mean, cooking oil is a need, you know, so we need that as food and to survive. But then we also use them to store water because of the water shortage, water crisis, and ever since that we have consumed so much that object has actually invaded our space because every individual has about 20-30 gallons, every house about 50-100 gallons, and the volume of that object has invaded the space, even distract the architecture in a way because you see them packed against some nice houses, beautiful, and it's all me. So for me, anytime I see the gallon, I feel like there's a problem. You know, it's raised the issue of water and all. Anytime, so that gallon has symbolized water anywhere, anytime, any part of Africa. And as an artist, I begin to see it as available materials for me to explore over decades, you know. And so I was working with them, you know, making sculptures and finding ways to send them back to where it comes from. So the name Afro-Gallonism came after 4 years ago, after I've explored and people know me as an artist who uses the gallon. So the name actually came about, like Afro-Gallonism, after looking how this object has a migration background from Europe to Africa, and through my artistic practice I send it back to Europe, but it means different and itself very different and more functional. So the name actually came from this colonial word. For me, it's a colonial word, Afro, because it's used to address black people.
And that's how we address ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So looking at this object coming from Europe to Africa, and it has become part of us. The gallon is not known in Europe, but it's very famous in Africa. It's very symbolic to our struggle. So the Afro is looking at the migration, because when an African migrates from Africa to Europe or anywhere in Europe or to America, there is this sort of colonial name attached, Afro-American, Afro-British, Afro, you know. So I also found out that I could give that name to that object because it also have a migration background from Europe to Africa and back to Europe again. So Afro-Gallonism is actually come from that colonial word Afro, you know, too, because it also migrates from one continent to another, you know. So that is how the Afro-Gallonism, and Afro-Gallonism also it also deal with the consumption of this plastic gallon in our space in modern Ghana, because if we are in the 21st century, we shouldn't have this as a symbolic material to survive, you know, because they are just ordinary plastic, and it doesn't actually helps, but it's sort of becomes a problem in our space, because people store water in them, and after 3 days the water get contaminated, and it's actually affecting us healthy wise, you know. So for me, the cutting was also getting rid of that plastic gallon. People in the community come to my state, because that's the way that I inform them about the use of this gallon and what it means for us and what is the disadvantage of that gallon, you know. So that is how I engage. So I have people coming after I was able to address that issue with them, and yeah, they has been very supportive, and yeah.
Wow. And it's a way also to discuss about what we do after using the gallons.
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
there is no recycling. We
Structures.
see them invading the space, as
Yeah.
you said. And
Absolutely.
so what I just noted from what you say is that migration is very central to your work throughout your family history and so on. And there is another work that you did on the displaced. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, okay, so the displays was reconstruction of my family history. What I did was, since I moved here, I have been very interested in my family history, the migration aspect, because migration is like the central form of my work. So this generation, our generation, I think is the fifth. My generation is the fifth generation, and the history of this family has been told over the past generations, and there is no like documentation that material wise. So it's about like a storytelling. They are telling us the history, like with different age, like different experience. So what I was interested, like, to construct a story that I've collected from the past generations, you know, and then also the old generation. So what I had to stage the performance. We migrating from Jamestown, and the story of this migration was that my ancestors were trading. They were warriors. They were trading food and alcohol with the people of Labadi. So they go to the north and they buy the cow, and you know, they have the beef, and they were also trading alcohol on the coast. So they were using the canoe to trade back and forth. And there was a fight between the people of Labadi and Teshin, the next town. They were fighting over the lagoon, which divides those towns into and so my family came to help fought against the people of Teshin. And that is how the chief actually gave this portion of land all the way to the ocean, where they arrive and do their trade. So that space was given to my family. And over time, the people of Labadi realized that we are not actually from here. We are migrant from Jamestown, so they begin to invade our space. So that is why we only have this place left. So together with my collective, I have to, take them to those history by telling them this is how we have to construct. So we spent like a month working on that, and the idea was to actually film from Jamestown to arrive in Labadi, but the tide was very bad during last year in June, so we had to stay from the coast of Labadi, and so we had to get costume. We used the fishing net because my ancestors. So every material that was used is an element during that time. Of the history. So the fishing nets sort of symbolize how they were benefiting trading on the coast, because they also fish as well for food. So we have the net tied on our face, and I used the canoe in my. So we had the beef. We bought the beef. We bought alcohol. So we started shooting from the family compound, and I have the women in African print in a very traditional costume, and we had to go on the boat. So we went on the boat for a while and came back, arrived with the alcohol, and and the idea was that migration also changed the culture, because through the performance, the women were wearing African costume, but when they arrived, they started wearing Western clothes like jeans and and long shirts and all that. So that was also part of that influence from the migration. So we still that performance, and I have this filmmaker called Charles, who is a LA-based filmmaker who came to film the performance, because I want to have a professional film, and so the film was shot last year, 2015, and has been shown in different parts of the world. The last was shown in Museum of Australia, Modern Museum of Australia, last month. So the idea was to show the film in different museums part of the world, because and the first time I showed the film was in California in March. That was the premiere this year in San Francisco. I had a show called Hand to Mouth. Hand to Mouth is a term in Ghana that you struggle the day just to feed yourself. So good. You have to work hard to survive the day. It's called Hand to Mouth. It's a term that is used to address that sort of struggle. And so that was the film was shown there, and the display actually was shown the sculpture. So what I did, I installed my broken boat on the coast, which sort of mimic that my family and the engagement with the people of Laos on the coast. So that sculptures were transported to New York to show. So that is also how the work has been displayed from Ghana, the coast of Ghana, to New York, to the city. So I had to install them the same way I install them in Ghana. So I transported the canoe that we use to New York.
Wow.
And funny enough, because it's an old canoe, when it got to custom, they have to duplicate the wood and all that, and they have stamps, and it's very interesting how objects migrate and how it actually change, and because there are people behind it, and how so the performance was great in Ghana, and the installation too, and everything was shown well received in New York. So one of like my first solo show in New York, it was such a great
And we see that reconstructing memory is very important in your work, and you did a show called My Mother's Wardrobe. It's really interesting. There's a video that's online, pictures as well. Can you tell us more about what inspired you to do this particular work, and what were the impressions of the people of the Go Local Collective, for example, the challenges that you had, and how was it received?
I think My Mother's Wardrobe was something that was very personal.
It was in 2015.
It was this year.
Yeah, 16.
16
Okay.
in March.
Okay.
So my mother's group, I think it's, as an artist, I'm very emotional with my work, and my mother has been very supportive, though she doesn't understand what art means, but she just allows me to create, to avoid spending time going around unnecessary places. So she just supports me with material that I needed. So 2014, 2014, I lost my mom, and I felt like, because my mom was also going around to collect the gallons for me, and ever since I lost her, I felt there was something missing. But then I was very emotional about it, but I was still working, but the energy wasn't that fulfilling, so I tried. After her death, I went to the US, and when I came back, it's more of a traditional thing. When you are a male and you lost your mom, you don't get any of her belongings, and I'm the only child as well. So when I came back to Ghana after a year, my mom's belongings were given to her siblings, because I'm the son and I'm the only child. I couldn't get, so when I came back, I was looking for memories from my mom, and I couldn't get any. So I felt very disconnected from her, so my mother's wardrobe was something that I came to me. How do I connect with my mom? Because she was part of my practice, very supportive with my art. So what I did to get out with my collective, I asked them to collect their mom's clothes, because I'm looking at fabrics over generations, and how contemporary fabric has, or how design has changed from tradition to contemporary. And I believe that there are a lot of fabric that they will be wearing that I'll feel connected to, because I quite remember a number of fabric that my mom has been collecting for different occasions. And when I was growing up, I've been wearing some of the clothes that she always wear. So for me to connect that memories, I need to see what they are going to bring. So I asked them to wear their mom's clothes, and it took us like 2 months to be able to convince them to wear their mom's clothes, because gender imbalance is a huge problem, or huge situation in Ghana, where people are sort of challenging it. So for them to wear women's clothes, it's never possible for them. So we spent some time. It took us a long time, because they don't want to wear it. They don't think it serves right. So I had to take them to go through my experience, how this performance was personal, and how do they also think about that? How do they help me share my personal, experience with that situation? So and I realized that after a month and a half, I began to realize that they felt attached, because most of them also lost their mom, and they are facing the same situation. And I kind of see how tradition question human rights, because it's a traditional thing that you don't have to. You are a man, so you don't have to. But human rights said we are equal. So why can't, because I'm a man, I couldn't get any of my mom's clothes? So they thought about that, and they went. Some of them went to their mom's wardrobe by themselves. Some of them, because they lost their mom and they don't have them, they have to go through their aunties or their siblings to get them. So once they agreed, and we had to do, submit costumes, and I realized that there are fabric from the 60s, from the 50s that I can relate to, because I think I saw that my mom was having the same, so it's also, for me, it's bringing back so many memories that I felt very comfortable. And the performance was for the whole entire day. So here is the space where they'll be submitting their costume. So every member brings the costume, the fabric here, and I have them displayed in my room. So every night I have to look at the costume, to sort of create that sort of relationship with my mom, her remembrance, and so that performance for me was very more spiritual than physical. And the performance started in the morning because they had to do the ironing, and we were using like the old iron from the coal and all that, because I want to have the sort of remembrance, because they were using that time during, and the fabric, the smell of the fabric, because it has been kept in the oven for a long time, so you can smell the fabric, and looking at the fabric from the late 60s and 50s till now, you see that the fabrics now, it's not good quality, because the Chinese is now operating our textile industry, and they've been importing a lot of inferior, so you can see how the fabric or design has changed over years, so we also have that sort of access, and the performance started from here. We had to wear our costume from, because of the gender imbalance discussions all over. I want people to adopt the human right aspect of it, so they felt very comfortable, they understood, and I was able to reach wider audience. Even my collective understood, and they were part of the performance, so they kind of accept who they are, and also accept who others choose to be, so the performance was very, very appreciated in Ghana. And I was surprised because the performance ran the whole day. In the evening was an after party, and I asked them to wear the clothes, and people were just happy around them, everybody felt comfortable, they were dancing in their clothes. And I think that it's being an artist, once you're able to reach people in the community, it's going to spread wide, and I have other artists who want to collaborate on that.
What are you currently working on, and what are your projects?
I think that being political is, I don't know how it's going to change, but as long as the country is facing a political crisis, I'll still be a political artist. But I still have other sides that I want to be more. I want to be more influential, especially in Ghana, Africa, and the world. Because recently, I'm one of the influential artists who is understudied in Brazil, and they are teaching the kids about my Afro-Galonism and my performance, and I think that it's a very strong position. And I have a lot of issues with the older generation, because they find me strange because of my practice, and they were wondering how I survived as an artist dealing with this all political, and I think that it's, the more I become influential, the more I become successful, so some of them were supporting, some of them were not sure, they were not supporting, they were challenging my thought, but I keep working as an artist, because our generation is quite different from theirs. What I think as an artist in this 21st century is completely different from their generation. And I think that it's based on our experience. We had opportunity to travel a lot because of our practice, and we experience different spaces, work with different artists. I'm interested in also collaborating with upcoming artists, because I know some of them have the potentials, but they are scared to engage because of that chaos of traditional, what is traditional and what is contemporary, so I'm working on a few projects to collaborate with them, especially photographers, and performing artists as well. So currently I'm working on more of like spiritual engagement with environment as well, because I think that the environment is something that has caused us spiritual implications, because there's a lagoon around that I'm installing my work in October, collecting plastic from that lagoon and using that plastic to make a tapestry huge to sort of protect the lagoon, because the lagoon was serving as people of Labadi as a spiritual source. It's used for spiritual bathing when you have like illness from spiritual attacks. That lagoon is, but because of the dumping of refuse in that has actually go against us, that we are suffering because of that natural resource that we had. That installation will be together with the performance and the sculpture, and will be shown in Museum of Los Angeles next year in January. Yeah, so what I do is I share my work in my community first to the people of Ghana before it goes to Europe to show, so that I sort of engage people to understand the work before it shows abroad, because the gallery system here doesn't always interested in selling to people, to tourists, to foreigners, to rich people. But I believe that art should be shared among the individual, the local communities, even the poor people, because that's the only way to draw their understanding to art, to engage in an art, art community. So I show my work in public space for free, for people to see, interact, create a dialogue before I show abroad. So yeah, it's very important for me. And the galleries here doesn't allow. They are very specific with people that comes in, rich people to buy, explain. And I think that art shouldn't be all about making money or selling, making impact which will help the country develop. So yeah, I'm also interested in. Yeah.
So you are trying to democratize the arts and access to art.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thank you very much for receiving us in your studio. Is there anything you would like to add?
Well, what I would say is that I think that as an artist, working every day is very important, because every day has different thing to offer. I work every day because if I were to be working in a bank, I'll be working every day, and creating from my mind. So I think I have to work every day.
And a final question, how do you feel seeing your work being exposed and exported in all these countries, being still based in Ghana, but being able to earn a living from your art and export it, and being counted as one of the leading artists in the art scene?
Yeah, how does it feel? I mean, I appreciate everything, and I feel that Ghana, for me, and where I am right now is the center of my inspiration. I'm interested in showing everywhere in the world, but I believe in living in Ghana makes me a better artist, makes me great. So I really appreciate Ghanaian also understanding my journey, and I feel very comfortable in Ghana. And yeah, I want to live in Ghana. I want to create in Ghana. Yeah. So that the story of an African art will definitely change, because there are a lot of young artists who are making waves in the international scene, and I think that it's good to be home to create, because I have people, I have the community, I have the materials, I have the content in my country. Yeah. So I feel very good, and I'm grateful, and also proudly African. Yeah.
I think this is a good way to conclude and to thank you, to wrap up.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Serge, for welcoming us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your studio is very inspiring, and your work as well. And we hope to see much more soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.